Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Arundel Camera Club meeting for Thursday, January 19th. My name is John Milliker and I'm the club president for the 2022-2023 season. The Arundel Camera Club was founded in 1957 and exists to promote the arts, science, and education in all aspects and fields of photography. For more information about us, please visit www.arundelcameraclub.org. We are so happy to be meeting now in person and also still online. If you're local to the Anne Arundel County, Maryland area, we encourage you to visit us at the Severna Park Baptist Church, located at 506 Benfield Road, Severna Park, Maryland. I sent out an email a couple days ago, and I also sent out an email today. We are doing a kind of a thank you fellowship for the members and guests of the Severna Park Baptist Church. That's going to be on Sunday, January 29th at 12 noon. This is a chance where we can have what's called a fellowship with the members of the church and their guests. Excuse me. And that involves bringing in some food, bringing in some goodies, some finger foods, and some snacks for them. And also, we're going to have a chance to talk a little bit about our club. Thank them for letting us use the area, and also maybe grab a couple members. I know there are some people that are pretty good at photography in the membership here. I'm asking anybody out there that may be able to. We are looking for people to either bring in or make snacks, cookies, maybe a cake, maybe cupcakes, brownies, whatever. Christine and I are going to bring in a meat and cheese tray if somebody might want to make a veggie tray. I sent an email out today. Please reply to that and let me know how you can help. We would also like to have a couple club members here that can kind of mingle a little bit and answer any questions and share their experiences with the Arundel Camera Club. And then lastly, I'm going to get with Ron, who you're going to hear from shortly, and Mike and Fred, and we're going to try to put together. We don't want too many because we don't have that much space, but we want to bring in some prints that can kind of show the depth of all of our Camera Club members. Before we move on to tonight's program, Ron, you want to talk a little bit about the MPA? Come on up. Watch out for that cable there.
All right.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, John. I haven't been doing a very good job of getting you up to date on the MPA stuff lately, but we've got a whole lot happening. I spent this morning helping Steve Sattler and a couple other people put up the display for the clubs, for the organization, down at the House of Delegates office building, third floor. And I was just amazed at the quality of the work there. I think it's well worth your while, and got compliments all day long from delegates and lobbyists and other folks who are walking by as they are looking at this. So we've got a lot of good stuff there, and we have a number of club members from our group that are part of that. And if I mention somebody's name, I'm going to forget somebody else's, so I won't do that. So that'll be a secret. But a couple things I want you to know. I had been also noticed that, they have a number of trips MPA has in mind, one of them to the Rockies, one of them to Cuba. I have different leaders running these things, and they're spectacular. Every person I've talked to have done these. They've done really well. Well, the deal is you get a really discounted price when you do it, but you also get $100 back to our club if you decide to participate in one of these. So none of these are super cheap, but they're absolutely run by the best, on the East Coast and the country. I did want you to know, we have, and Fred talked to me about this a couple of times, we have a black and white photo contest coming up. So we did the black and white and color contest back during the summer. On February 15th, it's right around the corner, and you'll be able to begin submitting your images for that. And the deal is it's free for the first two, and I think it's $10 for the next two you like to submit, but it's all black and white. This is just for your fun and entertainment. No money attached to the prizes on this one, but we have a lot of us in the club shooting black and white. It'd be great to be able to get some recognition. The announcement of the winner on those winners for that contest will be coming up in the Odyssey of Light, which is our Sunday, April 15th and Saturday and 16th. Saturday and Sunday, 15th and 16th of April, is our Odyssey of Light this year. We've got some really amazing people. Joe McNally, Brian Peterson, and Art Wolf. And I know you all know those names. Plus, there's a fourth one coming up, and I'm not going to reveal that one until we have them signed on it, but it's really quite good. So we're really looking forward to that. And by the way, the trip to the Canadian Rockies, that's being led by Michael Chinizzi. He's done some really good jobs. This one will be Banff, Lake Louise, and some other great locations. And Charles Needle, by the way, will be doing a artist spotlight on February 13th. You might look about this because Charles is also going to take a group up to Longwood Gardens and do some macro and some insects. And if you want to kind of know who he is before you sign up for the workshop, February 13th might be a really good opportunity to kind of scope that out ahead of time. But I'm really proud of everything that the group has been doing, and I'm also especially proud of the fact that every time we put in some good work from the club here, it's rising to the top of the pile for sure.
Great.
And John, anything else I need to mention?
I don't think so.
Okay. Oh, one other thing. We have a contest next week. It's a print contest.
I don't. Christine will announce all.
Well, then I'll let you do that, Christine. You're next.
Good evening. To review our schedule, next week on January 26th is our print contest with a theme of open. On January 29th, come out and help us promote the club to our meeting place here at Severna Park Baptist Church. John already told you about that. On February 2nd, we have a program by John Milliker on aerial photography. So come out and listen to our president talk about one of the things he's gotten into in the last few years. On February 9th, come out, stay home and watch our digital contest with the theme of glass. Get your submissions in the Tuesday before. On February 11th is our field trip to St. Michael's. And then on February 16th, we have Lori Lankford giving a program on Looks Like a Painting. For tonight, I would like to introduce our speaker, Harry Crosland. Am I pronouncing that right? And do you want to talk about yourself or do you want me to?
Yes.
Okay, come on in and we'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Mike for asking me to come in to do this. This is something I don't get to do often. And matter of fact, this is something I don't get to do with a lot of photographers. I'm kind of unfamiliar with the subject. I could tell you a lot, but I'm going to try to keep it short. I could tell you how I got started in photography, which had to do with a errant camera that was found on a subway train, but that would take too long. So like what you're about to see tonight, it's going to be like sort of an origin story. So I've been shooting almost as long as I could lay hands on a camera, except I really didn't get trained how to like really shoot and fine-tuned until around 2016 with a gentleman by the name of Daryl Todd. Daryl has a studio in Washington, D.C. called The Bakery. And as a matter of fact, he shot me and my wife's wedding. And I was so impressed with his work, I was like, you know what, I really would like to find a way to get into photography. And when I found out that he actually taught, I said I actually want to try to do it. And he actually let me sit in on one of his classes. So this is kind of where I got here. We started doing cosplay back around 2009, 2010. And to be frank, what I really noticed is that there was like a large lack of diverse photos that came from a lot of the events we went to, like the comic conventions, some of the open group photography things and things of that sort. So I said, if we're waiting around and complaining about our photos not being taken because we would go to these events, we would go to these shows, we would have these big bodacious costumes, but you would never see them posted anywhere after the fact. I said, well, I need to start doing it because I want to make sure I get a cross-section of everyone, young folks, old folks, you know, all the different races, sizes, tall, short, skinny, whatever. And after a while, I said to myself, well, I got to get better because I was shooting by luck. So I went to Daryl and I told him I wanted to maybe try out a course. He had me come sit in one night, and when I introduced myself and I told people what I wanted to do, they're like, well, what is that? I said, I want to do cosplay. Cosplay is where people dress up in costume like superheroes, and I want to get better at that. People laughed. Some of those people sitting in there laughing. But to skip ahead, since that time, I've had my work published in Men's Health magazine. I've had my work published in Star Wars Insider, and both of those two publications, I'm probably one of the first, if not the first, Black photographer / cosplayer to have his work published in a worldwide publication like that. I've had my work featured at the Reginald Lewis Museum in Baltimore, and we've done countless things as far as judging contests. Recently, we flew out to Washington State to one of the comic conventions out there, and I was actually judge of a photo contest where people entered their photos. So it's a lot. It is a lot, and the reason why I wanted to present, because this is something where you're not going to do like someone just standing there. One of the things that I enjoy about cosplay is bringing the characters to life. Because, you know, we're so used, especially nowadays, you have like these large movies, the Marvel movies, the DC, Superman, Batman, and, you know, the fans are out there. They want to dress up in the costumes, and then they need someone that's going to do it. So unlike your regular fashion, you know, exposés and things of that sort, we start here. This is a photo of me that I recently had taken when we went to an event called Dragon Con down in Atlanta. And let me stop a second. All over the place at any given time or any given weekend, there are comic book conventions. There are pop culture conventions. And what they serve as, it's a vehicle for people like myself, whether they're in costume or not, to go to these events, to be around like-minded folk. They have panels similar like what we're doing here, you know, where they're talking about different subjects. They also get to meet celebrities and personalities. And what's really beautiful is when you go to meet like a comic creator or a celebrity and you're dressed as a character that they do, and they love seeing these things brought to life. And Dragon Con is probably one of the biggest conventions in the United States. It happens every year on Labor Day weekend. It's a 4-day event. It pretty much shuts down all of Atlanta. And it runs for 24 hours the whole time. So this is some of the stuff that I've had published. That right there, that is this young lady here in her costume that she builds. Matter of fact, she builds both of our costumes, and she has done impressive work. And one of the reasons why we were running slightly behind the night is we had a client that came through that needed to get a helmet fixed. So this is her. So this is a picture I did of her a couple of years ago and was published in that magazine. This is my best friend, Wendell. This is the Star Wars Insider magazine I was talking about, and work was published through that. And this is my pride and joy, the Men's Health magazine. One of my associates, Demetrius, did He-Man. And I could say it's probably one of the few items that actually broke the internet. And the question is, what does it take to bring a character to life? So when it comes to recreating concepts, sometimes the basic thing is to take something that was done in a comic book, whether it be a cover or a panel or something like that. It starts with the idea. Like, this is a thing that I want to do. Can we recreate it? And we take a look at it and like, okay, well, how can we not only bring it to life, but how can we make it better? So my friend Corey has done different iterations of the Falcon. He's even done the Captain America version. And when we had thought about this, there's an area in Baltimore called Graffiti Alley. Anybody here been to Graffiti Alley? Yes. And I said, this would go perfect. And to set it up, One of the things I always enjoy when I do shoots is lighting. I feel like lighting is very important in bringing some of the costumes to light. And sometimes I'll either do like a split shadow, Rembrandt, but it's all about the placement, because even when you look at a lot of the panels in comic books and things of that sort, you could tell some of the artists use that light to bring that character out, to express their emotions, whether or not it's to put a character in a good light or a bad light. Because one of the things I did discover, and I believe I have a picture here later, when you have like an evil character, sometimes it helps to have the light below and shoot up to get like some of the shadow. So that's some of the things that I look at when I go to shoot. This is what I was talking about. That's me, again. And my friend Sam, when he shot that, he had the light 8600 softbox aimed straight down, and he had me dip my head. And as you can see, it just kind of brings out the mystery. It just kind of looks foreboding. And of course, you can't see my face. So that's why it's important. Like, well, yeah, they're not just going to stay here like this and just be static. It has to tell a story. That's more or less what I'm getting at. You got to use your lights to set a mood, whether it's going to be something good, something's going to be foreboding, something's going to happen. And I'm actually stop a second. Does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything like that? No.
And I'm watching the Facebook stream for you. So
Okay.
if people ask there, I will ask for them.
Okay. All right. And matter of fact, and I need to stop and slow down. I need to tell you who the characters are. This character is named Dr. Voodoo. It's similar to Dr. Strange. He does a lot of magic. He's a mystical arts character. And of course, by name Voodoo, he kind of practices voodoo as well. And this costume was created by my wife. Okay, this character is Raiden from Mortal Kombat. It's my friend Kelly. And we shot this over, matter of fact, we shot this over in a garage not too far from my home, by the subway. And this is done with natural light. And we had the sun coming in. And what I really wanted to capture with this, because of the hat, I wanted to get the shadow play off of the back wall. And just a really nice, serene shot. Didn't necessarily need to see her face, but just wanted to capture like a moment where she's preparing to do something. She's preparing for battle. She's just being really pensive. And that was the mood I was going for with this shot. This one was also done at that same garage. This is one of my friends doing Winter Soldier. Now, the fun thing is, you may think that their arm is actually broken off. Their arm is actually inside here in their sleeve. They have a prosthetic on. So that way you can have that broken arm look. This is actually a scene from one of the comic books where they were fighting Captain America and Captain America brought their arm off. This is Winter Soldier, AKA Bucky. And another thing with some cosplayers that we tend to do, makeup, a little bit of grime and dirt, fake blood to, again, elicit that mood. So the whole idea with this shot, they're just coming out of battle. They're tired, they're exhausted, and the whole shoot looked like this. And then what helped, because the reason why it's glistening, it rained that night. So we did some of the shots outside, and as we were coming in, what wound up happening is we were taking a break, and they just stopped to lean. And as they were leaning to the side, I saw the shadow playing off, because the light inside of the garage was hitting them from the left angle, and I saw the shadow, and we took the shot there. And it was just, this is really one of my most favorite shots, and this is something I did early on when I first got into shooting. Now, a lot of times you want to go take it into the studio. And again, depending on the costume, you use a different light setup. And One of the things I think to myself sometimes is I may or may not necessarily like doing in the studio, because what I tend to really enjoy doing when it comes to certain shoots, I like to do them outside or at a location where the costume fits in with the background. Because that's how I feel like sometimes you really get the story. Like if someone wants to do Batman, I want to do Batman kind of like in a situation like right now. It's dark, it's moody outside, you got the rain, you got that singular light. Because again, the thing that I'm going for is when people see that picture, they're thinking, this could be real. This is something that stands out. You see the stuff in the comic book, but now that somebody's actually doing it, it kind of stands out to me. So I'll use the studio as necessary, but I tend to enjoy more of a location shot. But starting off, this was a James Bond shot that I did early 2017. And the thing I wanted to do with my friend Austin, I wanted to make it look almost like a typical Bond thing. He's there, he's debonair, he has the Bond girls with them. And this is one of the things that we got. And there were several more shots with this that we had that we went back and just did like a whole movie poster series off of that. And this is one of the shots that we did. Another thing sometimes, cosplay does not have to be complex. But also the person has to fit the mood. So last year, my aim was to do sort of like a 1940s glam shot. And this was done at the House of Photography studio not too far from here. And what we wanted to go for with this, and I apologize, I forgot the young lady's name, and I was just, Crystal. What I enjoyed about Crystal when I asked her to do this shoot is she has like the facial features, like when you think of like, your Greta Garbo's and, folks from back in that day, she has like the posture, she has the look. And when I go to do shoots like these, I don't want to just go grab anyone like, yeah, come on, let's do the shoot. It's like, no, there's a certain thing I want to go for, because again, I want you to look at this and think, hey, this could have been on a movie set decades ago. And we did this whole shot in black and white. And the only reason why I left everything here, it looked like it was between the scenes, like she was filming a movie, but she was going to relax on the couch while they were changing the set. And I just said, I just want you to be regal about it, like you're practicing for the next scene, and just sit accordingly. And this is what I got. And that's something that I rarely ever do, but I had fun doing it. It's shooting in black and white, and it's not easy. So I'll take a pause again. Any questions, any comments, anything?
When you're black and white, did you shoot them in camera, or did you post them, process them in post?
This one I did post-process. I actually shot it in color, because there are a couple of times when I will shoot it in color so that way I can see what it looks like, because sometimes I do like to have that color as well, in case I want to also have that as a reference.
The question for this
yeah.
was that whether he did the black and white in camera versus.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
making sure people heard what the question was.
Yeah. But the whole shoot, everything I processed afterwards was in black and white, but I did retain the colors, because sometimes I do like to post the colors afterwards. But a lot of them, they did well with the black and whites, and I did combinations of black and white. I did some sepia shots, and I did combinations thereof. I even did one, and I kind of wish I had posted this one as well. I did one of them in selenium, so it almost had like an icy sheen to it. It was a really nice portrait that I did. And then we played around a lot with the lights as well. We had some silhouettes and did some Rembrandts as well, because again, we were trying to elicit that whole 1940s mood. And I was just talking about it a while ago, but where do we go? Comic conventions, anime conventions. Like I said, they're all over the place. So if you ever want to get an idea of like, well, where do I find all these people? I'm gonna speak for Maryland first, because I can't speak for everywhere else because I haven't been everywhere else yet. I'm still working on it. But in Maryland, we have at least 5 well-known cons during the course of a year. We really just had one a couple of weeks ago called MagFest, which was held over at the Gaylord Hotel. That one kind of runs 24/7. And anybody that's been down in that area knows that there are a lot of nice little places where you can go do some nice photo shoots. After that, there's another one that's coming up in a couple of weeks called KatsuCon. And that's usually the second or third week in February, is right around my birthday. So that's usually my little birthday present to get out and go do things. Yes, sir?
Yes, by any chance, do they just let photographers walk in?
I'm gonna get to that in 1 second, as soon as she gets the mic.
Oh, do they just let photographers come in? If, let's say I just showed up with some lights, would they let me in?
Okay, so every comic convention is different. There are different rules for different ones. Because to kind of get a little deeper into that, you do have photographers sometimes that will schedule and book cosplayers, and we will hash out a fee for that. So there are some conventions like MagFest that's a little more lenient as far as people coming inside, as long as you're not dragging an entire studio. KatsuCon is kind of the opposite. If you want to do a shoot, you need to do it outside and do it within the regulations of what's ever going on at the National Harbor. But it's one of those things where you have to be respectful of the property with whatever they want to do. You don't want to go in there with a full kit, 2 or 3 cameras, giant lights, and things of that sort. What I have seen people do over the years, there's a gentleman, he mounts 2 speed lights on a bracket over his back, and he's literally mobile. Click, click. He's mobile the entire time, and God bless him. And he gets some beautiful shots. On the flip, I've seen people that mostly will use a single light. They'll come in, they have a small soft box, have a drop stand, go to town. I fluctuate between having that, and then sometimes what I'll do is I'll just mount a speed light on my camera and go. Because I know, like I said, depending on where I am, the rules are weird, because sometimes they'll even say one thing, then they'll do another. And then the biggest thing is when you go outside. And this is where I tend to tell some of my friends, if you're going to do things outside at any of those cons, have someone with you. Because the weird thing is, with MagFest and KatsuCon being in the winter, Maryland, weather is weird. You want to know what the weather is? If you don't like it, wait a few minutes, go outside. If you don't like it, come back in, wait 10 minutes, go back out. You'll probably get the weather that you want. And that being said, a lot of times it's windy, especially right down there by the harbor. And I did have the unfortunate pleasure of seeing one of my friends lose his light box to the harbor. I think Mike wants you.
There were some.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, yeah, to answer your question, and then there are other ones, they may want everyone to pay full admission, because some places will allow you to go so far in the venue before it's like, no, you need a ticket, and then there's some places that won't let you in at all. So it's always best just to kind of know the venue before you go in and take a lot of equipment. But I tell people, pack light. If you're gonna go and you're gonna be out for a while, pack light. Let's see.
Oh,
and I'll tell you about these
not
shots in a
through.
second.
Online, we have a question. This person says, awesome work, dude. How long have you been doing cosplay?
My wife and I have been doing cosplay since 2009.
And then he says, this is from Curtis Beckett, I just started doing cosplay and I'm on my 3rd cosplay. Shooting, and then Dante Nickens says,
I know Dante.
Shooting raw in color now makes the black and white conversion have way more data.
Yeah, and that is true. And matter of fact, to kind of go back to the black and white picture, I did do that whole session in RAW. I'm glad he brought that up, and I should have mentioned that. I did do that whole session in RAW. So that way, when I went to go do the conversions were a lot easier. Now, once you make it inside of a venue, and you've scouted out the places to shoot, what tends to happen is a lot of these events are crowded. A lot of people are jockeying for spaces. And I actually had a debate with someone a couple of weeks ago about this, who complained about, well, when I go to these events, it's hard to shoot because of space. And the thing of it is, you have to really have like a good sense of timing. And then if you really ask people nice enough to clear out and give you some room to shoot, you can really take some nice shoots. So these pictures here are what we call hall shots, which is basically the shots taken inside of a venue, and just in a nice space where you have a nice, decent background, so that way you can get the shot that you need. And generally the idea is you really just want to make it look like they're there all by themselves. You have a room or space that's just full of people, but if you get yourself like just enough space, you can do this. And I actually shot this with 85 millimeters, so I was back a good little way. So where I'm standing now, the model that I shot might have been where you're sitting, sir, maybe a little further back, because the main thing I wanted was the reflection on the floor. And that's one of the things I love about shooting at the Gaylord when I have the opportunity to do so, is making use of that reflection to really, get a good shot. And then upstairs on the area where they have the large gazebo, they have these beautiful doors, and a lot of people tend to use this space here to get that background with the door. And this is one of the more crowded areas that I was telling you about. You have the folks here, and then of course it's a matter of using a lens that's going to give you enough of aperture to open it wide enough so that way you can keep them in focus and just kind of blur everyone back. And same thing with this, even though, actually I remember why I put this, because this is one of the examples of what happens when you have a lens and you're kind of shut down as far as your aperture. You see everything going on behind your model. And generally, what I tend to tell people, be it photographers and or cosplayers, is when you go to these cons, sometimes the idea is, as you're shooting, is you want to try to also, I guess, market yourself to get the cosplayers to say, hey, let's do this outside of this area. Because like I said, some of these people have such great looking costumes, but they don't necessarily fit, if that makes any sense. Because you can look at this and you can tell, well, yeah, they were out somewhere, where if you sit down and talk to the person about their character, well, where does this belong? And what's a good background for that? And then you could make arrangements after the comic convention, like, well, hey, let's set up a shoot, because the whole idea is I want to make this come to life in the venue that it should come to life in. I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
I have a question from Facebook.
Yes.
Debbie Wolf asks, are the people happy to be photographed? And then do you send them copies, or do they just like the publicity?
Good question. So, like with anything, and most of them, yes, they are happy. But like anything, you're just not going to go run a gun and shoot, ask permission. That is a must. That is a must. I could tell you, a lot of times being on the other side is nothing worse than being in costume. You've been in it for 6 or 7 hours, you're tired, you're starting to take things off. And as you're trying to take your pieces off, someone wants to take a picture. Or worse yet, you're trying to eat lunch. Those are my favorites. I go to sit down, can I get your picture? I want to eat. So it's always a thing of asking for permission. And then the bigger thing is, if you have to pose them, is it okay if I touch you? Because I will tell you, there are a lot of people in costumes. Yeah, I gotta go there. There are a lot of people in costumes that it takes a lot for them to do, and not just physically, but mentally, because you're putting yourself out there in public, and sometimes you might be wearing something or wearing next to nothing in some cases, and this is a whole brand new thing. And we have had lots of issues over the years where some people, unfortunately, are unscrupulous with what they're doing with the camera. I'm just gonna be very blunt and upfront about it. And a lot of times they'll go out there and they shoot, and you don't know where your images are going. And anybody, especially photographers, what I say do, make sure you have a business card or make sure you have some way to get those images back. Because to answer the second portion, what I always tend to do if I don't have a card, on the back of my phone, I made a QR code using an app called Linktree, and I can put all my information on there, and I can say, scan it, you can open it up, you can see where my information is. And generally, I get their information as well, and I try to get them their pictures back almost as soon as I'm done. So usually, my turnaround time, depending on how many images I got, are usually within the week. So that's definitely one of the things. And that was a good question, too, what becomes of those images? Because I can tell you between the both of us, we've had times where we had our pictures taken and we still have not seen some photos. It happens. Yes, sir.
Do they ever set it up like a runway shoot as far as, do they ever set that up on like a runway shoot, like you do a fashion show where everybody's in a line and they just take their time and go?
A lot of places are starting to gravitate towards that. We actually just did one this past year at Baltimore Comic Convention.
Did they put the lights on? What do you call it, nail light?
They did not, unfortunately. It was a large room area. They had and the question was what kind of equipment did they have? The Fresnel lights and what the setup was. So I'm going to go into the setup. So the way Baltimore Comic Con was structured, and this is how they've done it each time, they will take like a large conference room. They will set up a stage. They unfortunately don't have like the cool lights and flashes and everything like that. But what they will do is they will have like a large stage for people to walk up, go out. They'll still have like a small photo pit where people can get their photos. They actually have a large screen, and that's one thing that a lot of places don't have. So if you're way in the back, you can still see what's going on. And then they come off, they have a step and repeat where people can just kind of be treated like paparazzi and get their pictures done. But that's actually a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the reasons why we chose to do it that way is because we have a lot of people that come, and depending on their level or their skill, they still don't always have a lot of attention paid to them. So what we decided to do with that fashion show is we set it up as such for people that wanted to participate, to come out and get their 5 minutes of fame and be happy with it. And it went pretty well. As a matter of fact, we got asked to do it again this coming year, and then I also got asked to set up and do the costume contest as well.
What I meant too is, like being at the end of the runway where the photographers are setting up with their stuff, and
Yeah.
they come up just like a model would do it and come up, look, to do her turn, do her thing, and then walk away. Do they do that? Where they get their costume together?
New York because my wife just reminded me too. They didn't do it like that at Baltimore. However, we had an event in New York during New York Fashion Week where it was set up like what you're talking about. So it was a whole thing. But as far as how the room was set up and structured, the room was set up like that. It was definitely set up. I wish I might have some video. Please remind me at some point to post a video, because I do have video of that, and it was definitely set up and structured for a strict fashion show sense.
I'm sorry to ask a bunch of questions, but
That's okay.
In this month, next month in Washington, they have a big show, and I just wondered if you guys are involved with that.
Which show are you referring to?
It's on the 24th.
DC
25th,
Fashion Show?
26th? Yes.
I'll be there.
Okay.
I'm actually shooting that event.
I'll be there.
And what's funny is the gentleman that organizes and runs the event, Mr. Ian Williams, I have asked him about possibly including cosplay. He's still thinking about it, and that's where I'll leave it.
Harry, I have a question in the chat, and the question is from Anthony asking, do you get a model release for the pictures you send into the magazines?
Yes. Now, glad he brought that up. Not every place will ask for one. There's a whole lot of stuff sometimes that goes on with getting, procuring images for magazines. Now, most of the publications that I've worked with, they will ask us for permission. And then once they got our permission, then they want the model's permission. So we have to send them something in writing saying, yes, my name is so-and-so, I took this shot. I will reach out to the model. I'll reach out to the model. Are you okay with your image being published? Yes, my name is Joe Schmo. I'm okay with you using this shot. We send it all to the publication. They'll use it. I have had times where I've had publications use my images without permission. There was one company last year, they did it twice. That's the crazy part. So the first time, they posted one of my He-Man photos. And the problem with that, and I'm glad I caught it when I did, was they used one of the photos that was licensed to Men's Health. So I had to reach out to them and I said, you really want to take those images down because that was one of the images, because not a lot of those images are online. I said, that's one of the images that are licensed to Men's Health. And if they find out, you're gonna get a not so very nice call from their team. So please take that down. If you need some images, I'll be glad to provide you with some. They will have my watermark on them. They will be low res. Because that was the other thing I found out too. This site that was using my images was a pay-as-you-go. You have to pay to log in and pay a subscription fee. So if you're not paying a licensing fee, we're gonna have to work that out. A couple of months later, Mike, you remember my Predator photo? They used that one. And second time I wasn't so nice about it. Second time around, I had to send a cease and desist letter to get them to take my images down. And I had to politely advise them. I said, I will be keeping an eye on your site. And if I start seeing more of my stuff pop up, I might have to go a little higher up the food chain to make you all stop. So that's the thing. There are some places that are very good with asking for permission to use your images, and then there are some places they will literally just swipe stuff wherever they can find it and boom, because they want to push their numbers up. So anybody out there that's listening, if you run a website or you run an electronic magazine, please go about the right way to use images. Most of the time we'll say yes, because you're not going to see a lot of this, but just go about it the right way. Any other questions coming up? Okay. This was one of the other shots that I did in the hallway. This is my friend Jay. He's actually doing, for anybody that watches Dragon Ball Z and knows about the entertainer Prince, this is what we call a mashup. So he's doing a mashup of Prince and one of the characters from Dragon Ball. And he gets a lot of attention for this costume when he shows up. And he does a great job. Matter of fact, that's a wig. So he's trying to do the whole Prince thing. And again, using the marble floor, I wanted to get the reflection. I wanted to use the door, and with the white and the purple, it just all came together. Really, really enjoyed this shot. Now, again, going outdoors, trying to set up the scene. These two young ladies were actually in the costume contest from AwesomeCon last year. And I was so impressed with their costume, I asked them if I could do a shoot with them out at a location that really sets this off. And we did this in Virginia. I forgot the name of the park, but we did this in Virginia. Now, the fun part about cosplay, it's not always comfortable. This was 90-degree weather. So imagine sometimes doing these shoots and the person that you're shooting with has maybe on 2 or 3 layers of clothes. Some of them are wearing leather. Some of them are wearing a lot of leather. And the first thing I say, don't look like you're hot. Try to make it look like you're not hot. And this young lady's also wearing a wig, had her face done. So it's like, we're gonna make it fast because I don't want your makeup to run. And it's not always comfortable. And then when you actually see some of the stuff that we tried to bring to life, what we're looking at is like some of these comic book artists, it's almost like a dare. Because you'll see something done in a comic book, it's like, ooh, we want to do that. Well, let's look and see how it was made. And it's even worse when the movies comes out. So when you have like, Black Panther, Wakanda, when you've had your Batmans and things of that sort, most of us are going because, let me see how I'm gonna go about putting this costume together. And we're waiting for the videos, because once it drops some videos, we can freeze frame it, we can start looking at it from all angles. Jeannie, you might want to speak on this really quick. since you put a lot of stuff together.
I'm actually looking at movies just for the costumes, but just because Harry has gotten to photography, I'm looking myself at the actual cinematography and the lighting. So I look for him as well. So it's hard to even look at a movie without looking at the quality of it.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the movies are almost like a hold my beer moment. It's like, yeah, we're gonna put this on the screen. We're gonna see if you can recreate it. Matter of fact, a good example, are there any Star Trek fans here by chance? Has anybody watched Discovery? The first season of Discovery, we were looking at those costumes, and we got some cosplayers. My friend Joe Colton, Dean Rogers, and Wes Whitlock, and a few others. They're big Star Trek cosplayers. And we loved that first season. We loved the costumes. What we didn't know, on the sides of the costume, it was some gold trim. Oh yeah, that's gonna be easy to put together. We can knock this out. Wait, and when they looked at it, that gold trim, the Starfleet emblem was done in really tiny bits. And you had to look at it hard and say, yeah, we might want to wait for someone to make that. It's always small details. It's always small details. Matter of fact, it comes down to this. There are people who cosplay and make their costumes based off of a comic character, a movie character, or they do original spins off of certain things. And matter of fact, let me go back 1 second. This is an original spin because, like I said, it's a mashup. He took two different things, he mashed it up together. And what tends to happen, and this is kind of a good, sometimes bad side effect of things, you get people that really enjoy it because it looks just like how they saw it in whatever medium it came out of. Then at the same time, you'll still have some of those people like, well, that's not accurate. That's not how he wore it in the movie, and blah, blah, blah. And our thing has always been, let people enjoy their cosplay. It does not have to be accurate. If they're happy and they're comfortable being that character, let them enjoy it. Or as I usually like to say, if you're not financing or feeding that person, leave them alone.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is a totally different subject, but how often do you get on the ground when you take these photos?
Yeah, thanks, Gina. There's a reason why my wife just asked that question. Because for me, matter of fact, the next photo coming up will probably be a good example. For me, you all see how tall I am. Most of the people that I tend to do photos with might be about your height. Come on over here, stand next to me so people can see. Right, now do me a favor, stand in front of me. So, the whole idea when I'm capturing someone, if I'm doing like this, when I go to edit that photo, I have all this stuff going on back here. I'm gonna have a lot of dead space. And then if you know what you're looking at, it looks like I'm looking down at that person. What I tend to do, because I have knee pads and I have old knees, and I didn't do it for this shot, but there's a shot that's upcoming that you'll see. I wanna make sure that my subject looks larger than life, and especially if they're short. So I'm gonna either get down and I'm gonna have the horizon cutting right across them and have some sky going on. I'm gonna go all the way down, depending on the shot. You already saw that shot. We're gonna let it be a surprise. So the whole idea is when you see those characters, I want them to look tall, I want them to look big, especially if they're not tall people. And I usually like for them to fill the frame, depending on what I'm doing. And this is actually a good example. Not down anywhere, but this is what I want them to do. And these are two characters from a game called The Witcher. And this is another friend of mine, Eric, and unfortunately he passed last year, by the way. He did a character from a game called Fallout 4, and this is kind of why I popped that logo. Matter of fact, when we tweeted this, the company that makes the game retweeted the image. That's how much they loved this shot, because one of the things I enjoyed about Eric's works, he did a lot of original characters, and even when he did video game characters, he paid attention to detail. And what's funny about this shot, he made me make sure that when I took this photo, and we had to do this 3 different times, to get the underside of his foot, because this particular character just has nothing to do with anything but the detail. He has this wrap going around his boot. And he was like, Harry, when you take this picture, make sure you get the bottom of my foot. You got the bottom of my foot? I got it, Eric. You got it? Eric, I got it. Let me get one more. Eric, you moved. Stand still, Eric. And I'm going to miss him in his cosplays. I really am, because like I said, he did some really off the wall stuff that just stood out. But this definitely was one of them. As a matter of fact, in some of the gaming groups that I'm in, when I posted this picture, a lot of people were talking about the bottom of his foot. Details matter sometimes. This one, I had nothing else better to do. There was this guy coming along with a Corvette. This was just a fun shot. A guy was coming along with a Corvette. It was white. We had a guy dressed up as a stormtrooper. Can I get the shot? And how we looked at it as, yeah, this stormtrooper's making a little bit too much money. The Empire might be overpaying him. What stormtrooper you know is going to have a nice Corvette? It was just a fun shot. I didn't do anything particular. Like I said, it was just hilarious. Like, white Corvette, stormtrooper. Yeah, they mix. Sometimes we like to travel. I don't know who that young lady is right there. This was a costume. Matter of fact, give it a mic, Gina. Yes, tell them about the costume, please.
This is actually an original character drawn by one of the illustrators at the Comic-Cons. I love his work. Actually, he's actually the only artist I would buy work from, believe it or not, and I'm an artist myself. But it's a character named Patience, and this is I saw it on a wall at a Comic-Con, and I wanted to bring it to life. And I was astonished when I showed it to him. Actually, we surprised him at one of the shows, and he was very happy to see it. So it's like art repeating life. And then Harry taking this photo when we went on the trip to Utah. So it's amazing how this cosplay continues in different forms and art. So that picture is about.
He was so pleased in the most literal sense. He fell out in tears. I'm not even joking. I wish I could find the video right now, but he was literally floored when he saw his creation brought to life. But yes, we took this costume to Utah, and because the main thing I thought when I saw it, I said this could have like a nice Old West spin if we could find the appropriate background. We found the appropriate background. We found the wagon. We found the outhouse. It's like perfect. It fit. It fit. And that's, again, one of the things is being able to use like natural climates to kind of bring things to life. And of course, living here in Maryland, sometimes, like I said, the weather changes on a dime. And sometimes when you're ready to do stuff, it's like you got to call someone who's like, look, I need you here right now so we can shoot this. And this is a perfect example of that. So this was 2 years ago, one of those nice snowy days. And all this is practical, by the way. I'm going to show you some special effects stuff later, but all of these are practical. But we had one of those nice little snow days, and thankfully we had time to prepare. So found out on Friday it was supposed to have been snowing on that Sunday. I called my friend Tiffany up and said, Tiffany, you have a Snow Queen costume that you're putting together, right? Can you have it ready by Sunday? She said, I think so. And I told her, I said, and the thing is, I need you here while it's snowing, because I'm not going to add them in post. I'm not that good. At that time, I wasn't. I'm not that good. And plus, it will look better while it was snowing. So take your time, but get here as soon as possible. She came up about 8 or 9 a.m., right when we were getting the heaviest snows. And believe it or not, this is in my backyard. We We didn't go anywhere. This was literally right outside my house. Single light with a 48-inch softbox, and I just had it off at an angle. And she wasn't even really prepared with the shot. She was still adjusting herself, and I was testing the light to make sure I had the light right. And when I looked at it later, I just loved the serenity of it all. And believe it or not, what she's sitting on? A manhole cover. We was like, we're gonna make it an ice throne for you for the day, madam. So yeah, it's always about having the proper background. Like for instance, with this shot here, my friend Nastasia, this is right over in Laurel. This is the Montpelier Mansion. We took some time out in April, and she's a reenactor. She actually works at the Williamsburg, what's the word on? Thank you. And she's one of the reenactors. She makes her own dresses, and she does a lot of brilliant work. And again, when we planned this shot, it was like, well, what's a good place to go do it? Because we had actually done a series of shots over in Ellicott City, and I didn't want to repeat. And that's kind of one thing about me is when I shoot, I don't tend to go right back to the same spaces. I like to have everything look a little different. So yeah, we went right over there. We caught it. The day couldn't be any more perfect because we caught it right in the evening. The sun was about to go down. We had the clouds popping, everything. And I said, it just works. Let me stop a second. Any other questions or anything coming up in the chat? No. Okay, any other questions or comments so far? No? Okay, and then this one I just did 2 weeks ago. Can anybody guess where this is? It is local. That's the Library of Congress. And this had been something we had been planning since November. And the only issue was the weather. Because when we were going to do it in November, it was a bit chilly. And then unfortunately, the model got sick. And then she hit me up right at the beginning of the year. I still want to do the shoot. So you're feeling good because it's colder now. Because again, when you're wearing certain costumes in certain weather, it's like, yeah, you got to suffer for your art. You're either going to do it in the heat or you're going to do it in the cold. Yes, sir.
That's a very nice picture. The picture is very nice. You have really good detail in that dress. Did a good job with it.
Thank you. Thank you. And one of the things with doing Library of Congress, and not for just this shoot, but for any shoot, one of the things I always recommend is either go down there very early in the morning, especially on the weekend, go down there very early in the morning when it's not a lot of people down there, or go late in the evening as people are clearing out. I don't go down there that much because I still like to have a healthy respect of government buildings and government property, and I only really like to use these spots as not just even in cosplay, but regular clothing, to elicit a good shot. Matter of fact, when we did our 10th anniversary photos, we hired Daryl to do our shots. We did our shots down there as well. And he did the same thing with us. So he took us down there early on a Sunday morning. We were there 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Down there for 45 minutes. Nobody bothered us. We were done. We were out.
I think you answered my question. Do you have to get permits in some of these locations?
Yeah, in DC it's weird and restrictive at the same time. I'm going to tell you what I've done and what I've heard. I've done things with lights, and what I tend to do, again, I go as small as possible because I don't want to have a whole production set out there and have somebody come and say something. So even with this shot, 8200 with the Magmod kit with the little dome, very low profile up, and and my light wasn't powered up that high either. So if somebody had come along and said something, I could just break down and go. Depending on where you go sometimes, somebody might say something and sometimes they'll just leave you the heck alone. And actually where I'm surprised that nobody says anything, but then also I do see a lot of people shooting over there, is the Lincoln Memorial. And I figured that would probably be the one place where people will always say something, just go. But the crazy part is, while that's a very populous area and people go down there to shoot, sometimes they'll shoot along the sides or along the rear, there's also the World War I memorial that's way off to the side. And it seemed like the last couple of times I went over there, hey, we don't want you shooting over here. Like, okay. And my wife and I actually did a shot over there a couple of months back. And one of the things I told her, said, let's go over here, get our shot to move, because I don't want nobody to say anything. So one of the things I say is, if you're not going to go through the 10 yards of getting a permit, shoot and scoot. Click, 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 leave. And then when Tiffany wasn't in the snow, we did the autumn leaves. And I had a friend of mine who loaned me the chair. And we were kind of doing two things at one time. This also is an original character. Matter of fact, the last couple of shots that you saw were all original characters that the cosplayers created. And one of my friends who loaned me the chair, she really was like, well, I want people to use them and I want to be able to advertise, because she has all these old rattans and she wants to rent them out. And she was like, Harry, you're not going to use these in a studio? I was like, nah. I said, we have all this beautiful fall foliage outside right now. We're going to set it outside. And that's what we did. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun is starting to drop. And one of the other pictures I had like a nice sunburst come right off the side of the chair. But it's just gorgeous. You know, my house does weird things in the fall. Sometimes it'll turn yellow. Sometimes it'll turn orange. One year it turned purple. I'm like, oh, yes, sir.
I just want to say one thing. Your pictures are gorgeous, but you also have a good post-process also.
Yeah, because one of the things I wound up doing with this photo, because I was about to say, is like the leaves were yellow. This is something I did post-process in Lightroom. One of the things I did, the leaves were still like mostly yellow. So as far as the saturation, I added just a tad bit to make them more red, because I really wanted the picture to pop. And I had to be really careful so that way my model didn't turn red right along with the leaves. So that was one of the things that I had recently learned how to do. Is like, yeah, like how do I get these ordinary looking leaves to actually have some pop? So that was one of the things I did post-process. Yes, ma'am.
I was just trying to get him on.
Oh, sorry. And then sometimes our cosplayers like to really risk life and limb and go in the water. And this was one of the shots where I was on the ground. We did this at Sandy Point. Believe it or not, we did this in December. Not this past December, December of 2021. 40 degrees out. We had done like a whole series of shots, and we had talked about doing this in water. I was like, Kelly, are you okay with getting in the water in that? So she's like, I am burning up in this. Go do it. And I think out of everything that I've done cosplay-wise, this is probably my absolute favorite, because it's something that you don't see a lot of. Because when someone has spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in a costume, the last thing that they're going to do is get it wet. And one of the very few times that someone's going to get it wet is also do so and do it in such a way where it actually just fits. So this one, I'm laid in the sand. I'm literally prone right at the water's edge. Because again, Kelly is about your height. And also with her being in the water, now she's a little bit shorter. So yeah, if I just stood there, I'd have been shooting down. So it was a matter of me getting low, because I wanted to make sure I got the water break like right here, and make sure, like I said again, to make sure that she fills the frame. And the whole idea is she's coming out of the water. You're laying on the beach, you're in Florida, you're having your pina colada, that comes out the water. You should be scared crapless at that point. Oh, what's that? I'm out. No, we're not doing this. That was the idea I really wanted to elicit. And the funny thing was this. I had another photographer who critiqued it and was like, well, you should have changed the sky. You should have did this. You should have did that. And one of the things I've definitely tried to get better at doing is not critiquing others' work without at least asking for the story first. Because I've seen what people have done with this character and it all looks the same. And it's always dark and dreary because the movies are dark and dreary. And when I go to shoot with my cosplayers, we always try to storyboard what they're looking for. How do you want the light? How do you want your background? What are the poses? And that's the thing. That's really one of the harder things about doing a lot of these shots is making sure that you get the poses. And Pinterest is your friend. If you don't have an idea of what that character is about or what they do, you can always go to Pinterest or just Google images and you can find different poses like, this, or like for Superman. Superman's, it's always gonna look like he's a champion. Spider-Man's going to do this. And even when I'm dealing with Spider-Man cosplayers, most of them are some of the most flexible people in the world. And there are two people out there who I know right now, when they do Spider-Man, I'm 100% going to get the best out of them. Gentleman by the name of Tyler Hoover. He does breakdancing. So he puts a lot of that energy in his Spider-Man cosplays, and he does so much good stuff to bring it alive. The other thing, coming back to this picture, the other thing was as far as the lighting, this was done close to noon, but the problem was making sure that I had her head lit up because where she was standing, the sun was behind her. So if I have the sun behind her, of course, she's going to be backlit. I'm not getting the face. So my friend Wendell, who went with me, I literally had him hold the light over her head, and I got a couple of shots to make sure that I lit her up. And it still was within looking somewhere near the word of natural. Because sometimes that's the hard part too, of course, especially when you're fighting with that big thing in the sky. Now, special effects. She does Photoshop. I'm horrible with Photoshop. And there are so many tools out there that I discovered that you could use if you're not good with adding effects in, because there's certain characters out there that all the posing in the world doesn't work unless you know how to add like the magic spells, the superpowers, the lasers coming out of their eyes and things of that sort. One of the things I recently ran across as far as a tool is something that's called Boris FX Optics. And I would say it's mostly a watered down version of Photoshop. Because one of the things that I discovered with Photoshop, and the reason why I'm so poor with it, is she'll tell you, how long you been using it, Gina?
25 years.
25 years, Gina's been using Photoshop, so she knows the ins and outs. And I hate asking her for help sometimes because she's trying to impart 25 years worth of knowledge to someone that just barely knows how to use it. So you're talking about layers and density and all these things that just sound like it's a foreign language. And what I discovered with optics is you can do a lot of that. You still have to use layers, but you can still do a lot with that tool and not have to know a lot of Photoshop. So I've recently, within the past 2 months, been able to get in and even take some of my older works and go back and just spruce them up. Because that's another thing that not only potential clients like to see, but even the cosplayers themselves is like, okay, if you got me in a pose and I'm doing magic, make the magic. Make the magic. So one of the first things, and one of the things that's always hard to do, is a lightsaber. And the reason why lightsabers are so hard is under practical usage, when you're using a flash, the moment that person turns on the lightsaber, you'll see the light. The moment you go to set that shot up and shoot the picture, your flash is going to overpower their lightsaber. So this one, and because I took it in low light, it actually had a better effect because you could see the light hitting the side. But I still had to fill it in because it was mostly a white looking tube. So I still needed the effect. So sometimes you have to jump in there and actually draw the light in so that way people can see it. This one is one of my more recent ones. This is my friend Dana as Sub-Zero. And this is actually one of the first ones that I did with the tool. And the whole idea, Sub-Zero's power, because of the name, ice powers. So with FX, I did like 3 layers. The first layer was actually to put the lens flare light in, color it blue, so that way it looks mystical. Then I actually added 2 layers of the particles. And one thing I love about the FX tool as well, the optics tool, is you won't get the same thing twice, because there's actually a tool in there that if you click it, I think it's called the time tool, like the time it takes for that light to appear and disappear, it will actually account for that. And then you could get like to a certain point and then you could rotate it and you can rotate it again. So I actually added 2 layers. So all of it will look different, just to look like little snowdrops. And then I did a burst tool on top of that, and then I just blended it all together to make it look like that he's shooting ice. And everything else behind him is practical. This was done at the Inner Harbor at sunset. So yeah. And then this one, this actually was probably the first photo I played with. And the reason why I defaulted to this one, my friend Waynetta, she wanted to do a Ghostbusters shoot. And she put as you can see, she put a lot of emotion in this. And this is also 90-degree weather, full costume. And the initial shot itself, I was kind of bummed because like we went through the whole thing of getting her in the pose. And as you can see, yes, I'm laying on the ground. I'm literally laying on hardwood floor. And when I took the picture, there were no effects. And I kept looking at that and said, I wish I knew enough to make it, to really make it stand out. So when I discovered the tool, I added the light effects to make it look like she's catching the ghost. So you have the swirling effect here as the ghost is going in, you have the sparks flying out, and then you have all the electricity, and then you have the light burst. And I really thought I would have, because I believe I had on some other photos, but I really would have had the before and after. You can see what I'm talking about. And this was another one, and again, this was in a garage. We love using garages for some reason. But this is a wizard, Saruman from Lord of the Rings, and just wanted to add something to, of course, I don't want you to look like you're just standing in a regular old garage. And then sometimes when you don't have anything else, you use practical effects and just pray you don't destroy stuff. This one, that's just fire. We found an abandoned mansion in Baltimore. I think they tore it down a little while ago. And we lit that newspaper on fire. And of course, yes, we had a fire extinguisher nearby. And like I said, sometimes I love to use practical effects, but we just kind of wanted that, that post-apocalyptic look. And I was like, well, I don't want to do it in post because you got to make the paper look like it's on fire. Like you can throw the fire, but then you got to get the actual burn. I said, so you know what? We're actually going to set that newspaper on fire. Just keep everything nearby because we don't also want to burn down half of Baltimore in the process. So yeah, I believe that is it. So, yes, sir.
So I think I know the answer to this, but you don't ever run into issues with they're always copying, DC or Marvel or Star Trek. You never run into issues with copyright or anyone getting complaints about that. They seem to take it as homage and great fans.
It depends. It depends. It's weird because for the most part, we don't tend to run into a lot of issues from the larger companies or anything like that. Sometimes, depending on the comic creators, especially when they come to the comic conventions, depending on who they are, some of them appreciate cosplayers, some of them don't like cosplayers. For instance, Neil Adams, who recently passed, he was very prolific doing a lot of stuff for DC Comics back in the day. He felt like sometimes that we were in the way. And by that, I say when we go to a lot of the conventions, depending on your costume, you're walking along, someone stops you, you're standing in the middle of the aisle. Next thing you know, you have paparazzi that has surrounded this area that are taking your pictures and blocking a vendor. And this vendor all of a sudden is not happy because you might be costing them money, and some of them don't realize sometimes you just brought them business. Because some people might not make it to that side of the con, like, oh, I didn't know you were here. Now, Neil Adams would have a setup almost as large as this entire room. That's how he sold his comic books. He would have like that whole area. And sometimes just because we were in this entire area, he wasn't always happy with folks being over there. So, we, as a rule, before people get set up really good to take pictures, look around, and if there's someone near, especially one of the vendors, ask them if they're okay. We get the pictures. On the flip side, someone like George Perez, who also did a lot of work with DC Comics, did Teen Titans, did Superman, did Batman, almost any character that you could think of with DC Comics. He loved cosplayers. He was total opposite. There was one year we went, and there was another artist that was sitting near him. And the one thing about George Perez, he was so prolific in his work that he could have a line, like if his table was here, a line would go around this entire room of people that was waiting to get stuff either signed or getting something drawn. And he actually stopped to come over to take our picture. I still got the YouTube video. It was hilarious because we were trying to be just we didn't want to disturb George because George gets in the groove. But he loved our cosplay so much. He came over and he took several pictures and went on back to doing what he was doing. So it depends. Now, on a larger scale, when you start talking about the corporations themselves, Disney and Warner Brothers, it is a mixed bag. And a lot of it has to be done where you're not making so much of a profit from doing it, because there are some people out there when they cosplay, they do get some paid gigs. They do get some notoriety, and they're making a name for themselves. So as long as they're not making so much money that they're taking like a drop from the bigger corporations, yeah, sometimes. Every now and again, they might say something. But again, it depends on what you're doing. We personally never had that problem. Like I said, depending on who we've dealt with and everything, it's actually opened up a lot of doors. So it just depends. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to remark that our oldest son, about 15 years ago, used to follow the Autocon conference. And when I was driving to work in the morning, I would see the participants. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And Otakon is an interesting beast. Because, matter of fact, most of the anime cons themselves are interesting in the fact that how they are set up as far as making sure that their fans and participants get in is usually not one of the best things about going to those conventions. A lot of those types of conventions, what they'll do, instead of sending badges out in the mail for people to get in, they make people register the day before or the day of. So what'll wind up happening, like this past year with Otakon, they will have people that will wait in line for hours to get in. And it really turns a lot of people off. And it's not fun. And for some, it's kind of a rite of passage. Like, you really haven't been to XYZ Con until you've waited in line like the rest of us have done, blah, blah, blah. Like, for instance, the last year that Otakon was in Baltimore, I had friends of mine that went and they waited in line. I followed them the entire workday. At 8 o'clock in the morning, they were one place in line. And throughout the day, as I'm checking in, well, I'm out of line going to get lunch, and this person's in line, and then I get reports from this one. We moved closer. This went on for the entire day. By the time I left at 4 o'clock, they had just got their tickets. A lot of cons have gotten better. The anime cons, like your Katsu cons and your Oda cons, they still, in my opinion, do it backwards, but a lot of places have gotten better, where once you've paid for your tickets, they'll send it to you in the mail. You got your badge. All you need to do is show up, scan your badge, go in. And the problem with that being a cosplayer is when you're in that line for 2 and 3 hours in the heat and you're melting. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about we call lobby con, like
Right.
photographers can get, I mean, you mentioned you saw people on the streets lined up. You can get photos that way. You don't necessarily have to go to a con.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to his question as well. Because like I said, there's some places and some venues that are okay with people hanging out. And as a matter of fact, I tend to encourage that, because even if you're not exactly a fan, if you want to go and just people watch and see what's going on, honestly, I think it's a good tool to let people have that, because if you're on the fence about going to that particular event and you hang out enough, then there'll be that one year, you know what, I will go buy a ticket and I will go. And like I said, when you have things like Otakon where the folks are standing outside, yeah, hey, can I get your picture? You know, you can get a picture of those folks. Even like for instances where you have KatsuCon that's coming up, in February, they are strict to a point where if you don't have a badge, they won't let you inside the hotel. But you got that whole area behind the Gaylord Hotel, and you will see lots of people out there doing photo shoots. You'll see a lot of cosplayers walking around, and some of us are walking around because we would love it if someone comes up and asks to take a few minutes and shoot our photos. And that's a great way to get images as well. As a matter of fact, one of my friends I've been in contact with, he wants to learn a bit more how to do it. And I told him, I said, well, if you got some time to meet me, you know, that Friday of KatsuCon, you know, we could walk around for a bit, because there's always people walking around. And the nicer the weather, the more people that there will be out there, and the more photo opportunities that you get. Because for a lot of these folks, they did not spend hundreds of dollars on their costumes and tickets to come to the con and coming from out of town to not have their photos done.
So I know you've been playing with this. What are your thoughts on the impact of AI on the artists and on the cosplayers?
Oh boy, who has a couple hours? Short version. I'm not crazy about the AI art. I'm not crazy about it at all, because a lot of what I've seen from the AI art really is plagiarism, because a lot of people don't realize the AI is actually pulling from stuff that already exists and it mashes it together. And to that end, if people are using it, you're like, you know what, I need an idea. And you're using it for that, like, okay, you know what, I didn't think about that mashup, I'll try this. That's fine. But the problem comes in when you have people that are taking that work, and for those that don't know, how a lot of this AI art works is you have a front end that you're really just punching a couple of words into a prompt, and it just generates a picture. You're not drawing, you're not picking up pen, paper, you're not even taking a photograph. You're literally, like for instance, Mickey Mouse at Disney World. And the machine literally spat out 4 renditions of Mickey Mouse with the Magic Kingdom castle. And I'm just like, oh. And the fun part with the AI, and this is the scary part, is it has not quite learned proportions yet. So on the outset, if you look at it, oh my God, that's beautiful, it's brilliant. But then when you look, the eyes are messed up, because sometimes, well, a lot of times the characters are cross-eyed. They put too many digits in the fingers, or they don't put enough. All the proportions, when you look at it, is just off. And I've literally seen people, especially 1 or 2 photographers, try to take that and sell it. And it becomes an ethics problem at that point. It's like, you drew nothing. You literally punched a couple of words into a machine, it spat something out, and you're going around slapping watermarks on it. Are you serious? And I'm wondering what's going to wind up happening when Disney, when Warner Brothers, when the big corporations will step in, because that's when that thing is going to get curtailed. There was a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, or rather the news article came out a couple of weeks ago, who tried to get a comic book registered with the Copyright Office. And he's like, no, you didn't create this. And the worst part about what he was trying to get copyrighted, it was a comic book, and it was supposed to have been about a girl in the magical universe. Unfortunately, that girl looked like a Hollywood star by the name of Zendaya that was been in the Spider-Man movies. And the patent company said, we're not doing this. So I really think what's going to wind up happening is when some of the larger corporations step in and start to really throw their weight around, like, okay, you're using intellectual property, or you're using tools to create stuff. Well, actually, you're using a tool to make a machine create stuff, and it's going to start getting clamped down. So, any other questions? Anything coming from chat?
Excellent. Harry, thank you so much.
Thank you
What
for
a
having
great
me.
presentation. Let's see, let me get over here to my notes just to kind of make sure everybody is up to date on all the goodies coming up. Next Thursday, print contest, theme of open. I may need to come over here for the camera, right, Christine? Christine's not paying attention. That's okay. Wow, your handwriting here. And then we have Sunday, January 29th, which will be here. That will start at noon, and if you are looking for a place to worship that morning, the services at the church start at 10:45. And then Thursday, February 2nd, me with some aerial drone videography and photography. I go from how I hated drones to I kind of like them now, a little bit. And then February 9th, that is a digital contest, theme of glass. That will be virtual only. February 11th is a field trip to St. Michael's. And then February 16th, Lori, is that Langford? With a presentation on Looks Like a Painting. That's great. That's the first I heard about it. Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. So online, thank you everybody for joining us here in person, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.